The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber opened with a sound like thunder. Captain Hansal Kim walked through them with steady steps, his black uniform crisp and clean against the strange lights of the alien station. Behind him, Ambassador Sojin Park followed, her face calm but her hands slightly shaking. The chamber was huge, bigger than any building on Earth. Hundreds of alien beings sat in floating chairs that moved through the air like boats on water. Some had too many arms. Others had no arms at all. Some breathed air like humans, while others sat in glass tanks filled with glowing liquid. The smell in the room was strange, a mix of chemicals and something that reminded Hansal of old flowers. The center of the room stood a tall platform made of white stone that seemed to glow from inside. This was where humans had stood for 30 years, speaking for Earth and the great conversations that decided the fate of worlds. Today would be the last time. Hansal climbed the steps slowly. Each step echoed in the huge space. When he reached the top, he could see all the alien faces looking at him. Some looked curious, some looked bored. Many looked like they thought, "This was a waste of time." The Speaker of the Council was a creature that looked like a tree made of blue crystal. Its voice came from everywhere at once, filling the air with sounds that made Hansal's teeth hurt. "The human representative may speak," it said in the common language that all species used here. Hansal pulled out a small device and pressed a button. His voice was sent to every corner of the chamber, translated into hundreds of different languages. At the same time, "Honored members of the Galactic Council," he began, using the formal words that were expected. "I stand before you today to deliver a message from the people of Earth." The chamber grew quiet. Even the aliens who had been moving around in their floating chairs stopped to listen. "For 30 years, humanity has been a member of this council. We have followed your laws, we have paid our taxes, we have sent our ships to fight in your wars and our doctors to heal in your hospitals. We have shared our knowledge and our strength with you, believing that we were part of something greater than ourselves." Hansal paused and looked around the room. He could see Sojin watching him from the visitors area, her dark eyes serious and sad. "But yesterday you voted to stop humans from traveling to the Outer Rim territories. You said we are too dangerous. You said we cannot be trusted. You said our creativity is a threat to the peace you have built." His voice grew stronger. "You have decided that humans must stay in a small box, like children who cannot be allowed to play with the adults." A sound like angry buzzing came from the section where the Valorian Empire sat. These aliens looked like giant insects made of gold, and they did not like to be questioned. Their leader, Chancellor Vextar, stood up on his 6 legs. "Human, you speak of boxes, but we speak of safety. Your species has been in space for less than 100 years. You make changes too fast. You take risks that could hurt everyone." Hansal nodded slowly. "Yes, Chancellor, we do make changes fast. We do take risks. That is what humans do. We look at problems and we try to fix them, even if the fixing might be dangerous. You call this bad, we call this being alive." More sounds came from around the chamber. Some aliens seemed to agree with the Chancellor. Others made noises that sounded like laughter, but not the good kind. "The vote was fair," said another voice. This came from the hegemony of Nyx, aliens who looked like floating brains in metal suits. All species were heard. The decision was made by proper rules. "Yes," Hansal said, "the vote was fair. And now I will tell you about our decision." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small crystal disc. It was blue and seemed to have light moving inside it like water. "This contains the formal withdrawal of Earth from the Galactic Council. As of this moment, humanity ends its membership. We will no longer follow council laws. We will no longer pay council taxes. We will no longer send our people to fight in council wars." The chamber exploded with noise. Aliens shouted and clicked and buzzed in dozens of languages. Some jumped up from their chairs. Others seemed to sink down as if they were afraid. The crystal speaker's voice cut through the noise like a knife. "Silence! The human will explain this madness." Hansal placed the crystal disc on the platform in front of him. It began to glow brighter, and suddenly the air above it filled with words written in every language the council knew. The explanation is simple. You wanted us to be less than we are. You wanted us to stop growing, stop exploring, stop being human. We cannot do that, so we choose to leave. Chancellor Vextar's golden wings buzzed with anger. You think you can survive alone? You think your small fleet and your few worlds can stand against the dangers of space without the Council's protection? We survived for thousands of years before we met you, Hansal said calmly. We will survive after we leave you. But the trade agreements, called out a delegate from the Peaceful Merchants Alliance. The technology sharing, the research projects, the defense treaties, these cannot simply end. They end today, Sojin said, standing up in the visitors' area. Her voice was clear and strong. All human ships will leave Council space within one solar cycle. All Council ships must leave human space in the same time. All agreements between Earth and Council members are cancelled. The noise in the chamber grew louder. Some aliens seemed angry, others confused. A few looked worried, as if they were starting to understand that something important was happening. This is foolish pride, said the brain alien from the hegemony. You will return within a year, begging to rejoin. Your species cannot survive the isolation. Hansal picked up the crystal disc. The words in the air disappeared. Perhaps you are right. Perhaps we will fail and come back to ask for your help. But perhaps you are wrong. Perhaps we will find that we do not need the Council as much as the Council needs us. He turned and began walking toward the steps. Time will tell which of us is correct. Wait, the crystal speaker's voice was urgent now. If you leave, what happens to the peace treaties you helped create? What happens to the medical research your doctors lead? What happens to the trade routes your ships protect? Hansal stopped at the top of the steps and looked back. Those are your problems now. You wanted us to be less than we are. Now you can see what less than us looks like. He walked down the steps with Sojin beside him. Behind them, the chamber, filled with the sound of hundreds of alien voices all talking at once. Some sounded angry, some scared, some confused. But Hansal did not look back when they reached their ship. Hansal pulled out a quantum communicator, a device that could send messages across the galaxy in seconds. He pressed a few buttons and waited for the connection. Director Lee? He said. When a human face appeared on the small screen, Hansal. How did it go? It's done, Minho. We're on our own now. Director Minho Lee nodded slowly. His face looked tired but determined. Then we begin the next phase. Come home, both of you. We have work to do. As their ship left the Council station, Hansal looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, Earth was waiting. And for the first time in 30 years, humans would be free to be what they really were behind them. The galaxy's greatest power structure faced a problem it had never imagined. What to do when the species they had dismissed decided to dismiss them back? 6 months had passed since Captain Hansal Kim walked out of the Galactic Council chamber. 6 months since humanity had told the galaxy they were leaving. Now something strange was happening across known space, something that made even the oldest alien species feel worried. Admiral Kyung-min Choi stood in the command center of Luna Base, looking at screens that showed the movement of every human ship in the galaxy. The room was busy with officers running between computer stations, but their work was almost finished. Soon, very soon, the last human ship would cross into Earth's solar system. Admiral, called out Lieutenant Jin Woo from his station, the transport ships from New Sol Colony have just passed Mars. They're carrying the last families from the Outer Rim settlements. Kyung-min nodded and made a mark on her electronic tablet. New Sol had been humanity's farthest colony, a beautiful world with purple skies and silver trees. Now it was empty, abandoned like all the other human worlds beyond Earth's closest neighbors. What about the mining stations in the Helix sector? She asked. Empty since yesterday, Admiral. The crews took everything useful and destroyed the rest. The aliens will find nothing but empty buildings. This was the plan that Director Minho Lee had made in secret during the months before Hansal's speech to the Council. It was called Operation Homecoming, and it was the largest movement of people in galactic history. Every human living beyond the core worlds around Earth had been quietly told to pack their things and come home, not just some of them. All of them. The aliens had no idea it was happening. They thought humans would keep living on their frontier worlds, just without council protection. They thought human traders would still fly through alien space, buying and selling goods like they always had. They thought human doctors and engineers would still work on alien worlds, helping solve problems like they had done for 30 years. They were wrong. Dr. Hyjin Nam worked in a laboratory deep under the surface of Mars, the red planet's underground. Cities had been expanded quickly over the past months, creating new homes for millions of humans who had lived among the stars. But Hyjin was not working on housing or food production. She was working on something much more important. The laboratory was filled with strange machines that hummed and glowed with different colored lights. On the tables were samples of alien technology that humans had collected over 3 decades of membership in the council. Computer screens showed complex diagrams of alien ship engines, alien communication devices, and alien weapons. "Dr. Nam," said her assistant, a young man named Taeho, "the new synthesis is ready for testing." Hyjin walked over to a table where a small device sat under a clear dome. It looked like a piece of alien technology, but it was not quite the same. Human engineers had taken apart thousands of alien machines, learned how they worked, and then built them again in new ways, better ways. "Activate the test," she said. Taeho pressed a button. The device under the dome began to glow, first white, then blue, then a color that did not have a name. The air around it seemed to bend and twist, as if space itself was being changed. "Successful activation," Taeho said, reading numbers from his screen. "The field is stable and uses 60% less energy than the alien original." Hyjin smiled. "Mark it as ready for production. How many items have we successfully improved now?" 437, Dr. Nam, and we're getting faster. Each week. This was Genesis Protocol, the secret project that Director Lee had started years ago. While humans had been members of the council, they had been careful to follow the rules about technology sharing. They had given the aliens many human inventions, but they had also quietly studied everything the aliens shared with them. Now that they were free from council rules, they could use that knowledge however they wanted. On the other side of the galaxy, Chancellor Vextar of the Valorian Empire sat in his golden palace, reading reports that made his insect-like face twist with confusion. The reports all said the same impossible thing: the humans had vanished. "Tell me again about the Kepler Station incident," he said to his intelligence officer, a younger Valorian named Korthak. "Yes, Chancellor. 3 days ago, our trade fleet arrived at Kepler Station to pick up the monthly shipment of human-made electronics. The station was completely empty. No humans, no cargo, no equipment. Even the computer systems had been removed." "And the human colonies?" "All empty, sir. Our scouts have checked 17 human settlements in the past month. Every single one has been abandoned. The buildings are still there, but everything useful is gone." Vextar's golden wings buzzed with worry. In his 200 years of life, he had never seen anything like this. When species left the council, they usually made angry speeches and then went back to their homeworlds to complain. They did not disappear completely. "What do our spies in human space report?" Korthak looked uncomfortable. "That is the strange part, Chancellor. Our spies report that all human worlds near Earth are more active than ever. Ships are arriving every day, bringing people and cargo from the abandoned colonies. But the humans have stopped all communication with non-humans. They will not answer our calls or respond to our messages." "They cannot hide forever," Vextar said. But his voice did not sound as confident as his words. In the hegemony of Nyx, the floating brain aliens were having similar problems. Their computer networks, which could process information faster than any other species in the galaxy, were filled with reports about missing humans. The hegemony had built their empire on information. They knew where every important ship was flying, what every major government was planning and how much money every species was spending on different projects. But now, for the first time in centuries, they had a blank space in their knowledge. Human space had become invisible to them. "This is not normal behavior for angry species," said Primary Mind Zektron to his fellow leaders. "When species leave the council, they usually become more aggressive, not less visible. They start wars or make demands. They do not simply disappear." "Perhaps the humans are planning an attack," suggested Secondary Mind Velcris. "Perhaps this silence is preparation for violence." "No," Zektron replied. "Our analysis of human psychology shows they are not naturally aggressive. They fight when they must, but they prefer to solve problems in other ways. This behavior suggests something else. What else could it be? I do not know, and that worries me more than any attack would." The effects of humanity's disappearance were starting to show in unexpected ways. Trade routes that had passed through human space for decades were now empty, forcing alien ships to take longer, more dangerous paths. Space pirates, who had always avoided human-protected areas because of Earth's aggressive patrol fleets, were becoming bolder on the peaceful world of Mentarch Prime. Elder historian Welfin noticed the changes first. The Mentarch were a gentle species who preferred books to battles, and they had always appreciated humanity's protection of the space lanes near their world. "The shipping reports show a 30% increase in pirate attacks this month," his assistant informed him. "And the cost of importing goods from the Council worlds has doubled because the ships must avoid the old human routes." Welfin's large, soft eyes looked sad. The humans were good neighbors. They asked little and gave much. "I fear we will not understand how much we depended on them until it is too late." Back on Luna Base, Admiral Kyungmin received a message from Earth that made her smile for the first time in months. It was from Director Lee, and it contained just 4 words: "Phase 2 begins tomorrow." She walked to the large window that looked out at Earth, hanging in space like a blue and white jewel. Soon, the aliens would understand that humanity had not disappeared because they were weak or afraid. They had disappeared because they had work to do, and they needed privacy to do it. The galaxy had gotten what it asked for when it voted to restrict human expansion. Now it would learn what that really meant. In the depths of space, automated monitoring stations that had been secretly placed by human ships began to activate. They were invisible to alien sensors, but they could see everything that moved through the space around Earth. The aliens thought the humans had gone silent, but humans were actually listening and watching more carefully than ever before. The silence was not empty. It was full of preparation. And soon, very soon, the galaxy would understand what humans could accomplish when they were free to be themselves. The first sign that something was seriously wrong came on a Tuesday morning in the hegemony of Nick's command center. Fleet Commander Zelkrin was drinking his morning nutrition liquid when the emergency alarms began to sound. Red lights flashed across the vast room filled with floating brain tanks and computer screens. "Report," Zelkrin commanded, his mechanical voice echoing through the speakers built into his life support tank. "Sir, we have lost contact with Expansion Fleet 7, reported his aide, a younger Nix whose brain pulsed with nervous energy behind its transparent skull. "They were investigating the abandoned human colony on Kepler 442b. Lost contact? Define lost contact." "Complete communications blackout, sir." The fleet consisted of 12 heavy cruisers and 40 support vessels. At 0347 hours, they reported successful orbital insertion around the human colony world. At 0348 hours, all signals ceased. Zelkrin's brain fluid changed from its normal blue color to a worried purple. "Equipment failure?" "Unknown, sir. We sent a probe to investigate." The probe also stopped transmitting when it reached the system. This was impossible. The hegemony's technology was among the most advanced in the galaxy. Their ships did not simply vanish. Their communication systems did not fail without reason. And they certainly did not lose entire fleets to empty worlds that humans had abandoned months ago. "Send Fleet 12 to investigate," Zelkrin ordered, "and equip them with backup communication systems." 3 days later, Fleet 12 also disappeared. Captain Donghyun Park floated in the command chair of his ship, the invisible wind, watching the hegemony vessels approach the Kepler system on his screens. His ship was completely hidden, using technology that the aliens had never seen before. Even if they flew right next to him, their sensors would detect nothing but empty space. "Captain," said his communications officer, a woman named Yunesio, "the alien fleet is entering the defense perimeter." "Understood? Are all systems ready?" "Yes, sir." "The gravity wells are charged and the displacement fields are active." Donghyun nodded. The defense systems around former human colonies were not weapons in the traditional sense. They did not shoot missiles or fire energy beams. Instead, they used technology that humans had developed by combining alien physics with human creativity. Ships that entered the protected zones simply found themselves somewhere else, transported instantly to random locations hundreds of light years away. The aliens would eventually find their way home, confused and frightened but unharmed. But they would also know that the abandoned human worlds were not as abandoned as they seemed. "Activate the defense grid," Donghyun commanded on his screen. The hegemony ships suddenly began to stretch and blur as if they were being pulled through invisible holes in space. One by one they vanished, transported away to distant parts of the galaxy where they would appear with no idea how they had gotten there. "All enemy vessels displaced, Captain," Yunesio reported. "No damage to our systems. Good. Send the report to Earth Command." Another group of unwelcome visitors has been sent home. The invisible wind was part of humanity's new silent fleet. Ships that existed in the space between normal space and hyperspace. They could move through the galaxy without being detected, could appear and disappear at will, and could defend human interests without firing a single shot. Back on Earth, engineer Ji-woo Song stood in a laboratory that had not existed a year ago. The room was the size of a football field, filled with machines that hummed with quiet power. At the center of the room stood a device that looked like a small metal tree with branches made of crystal. "Dr. Song," called her assistant, Young Sik. "The test planet is ready for the Prometheus treatment." Ji-woo walked to a control panel covered with screens and buttons. On the main screen, she could see a dead world orbiting a distant star. The planet's surface was gray rock and poison clouds, completely lifeless and hostile to any form of biology she knew about. "Begin Phase 1, she said. Young Sik pressed a series of buttons. On the screen, the dead planet began to change. The poison clouds started to clear, showing patches of brown soil underneath. Small pools of water appeared in the low areas, growing larger by the minute. "Phase 1 successful," Young Sik reported. "Atmospheric conversion is proceeding ahead of schedule. Begin Phase 2. More buttons were pressed. Now the brown soil began to turn green as simple plants sprouted across the planet's surface. Rivers formed where there had been only dust. Snow appeared at the poles, white and clean. Phase 2 successful. The planet now has a stable atmosphere and basic ecosystem. Begin Phase 3. The final phase was the most impressive. Complex. Plants began to grow, creating forests and grasslands. The oceans filled with simple sea life. The air became thick enough to breathe, clean enough to drink after it rained. Complete transformation achieved, Young Sik said, his voice full of wonder even though he had seen this process dozens of times. Total elapsed time, 4 hours and 37 minutes. Wu smiled. Project Prometheus could turn a dead rock into a garden world in less than 5 hours. The process that had taken nature billions of years and traditional terraforming centuries, humans could now do in an afternoon. Mark this planet as ready for colonization, she said. And prepare the next candidate. We have a lot of worlds to build. While the aliens struggled to understand what was happening to their ships, humans were quietly building an empire in the dark spaces between the stars. Every day, more dead worlds became green paradises. Every week, new human colonies appeared, in places that had been marked as uninhabitable. On every galactic map, the news of the missing fleets spread quickly through alien space. In the halls of the Galactic Council, emergency meetings were called to discuss the growing crisis. Species that had barely spoken to each other in decades now shared worried conversations about the human problem. "It's clearly some kind of new weapon," insisted Chancellor Vextar of the Valorians. His golden wings buzzed with anxiety as he spoke to the emergency assembly. "The humans are using advanced technology to destroy our ships without leaving evidence." "Our analysis suggests otherwise," replied Primary Mind Zektrin of the hegemony. "The missing ships show no signs of battle damage. They simply vanish from all sensors simultaneously. This suggests transportation rather than destruction." "Transportation to where?" asked Elder Historian Welfin of the Peaceful Mentarch. "And how is such technology possible?" "We do not know," Zektrin admitted, and his honesty made the assembled aliens even more nervous. Our understanding of human capabilities was apparently incomplete. In the back of the assembly hall, a small, forgotten delegate from the Traders' Coalition stood up. Captain Rextal had been a merchant for most of his life, flying trade routes throughout the galaxy. His species was not powerful or important, but they were good at noticing things. "Honored representatives," he said in a voice that was quiet but clear, "I believe we may have misunderstood the human withdrawal." "Explain," commanded the crystal speaker. "We assumed the humans left because they were angry and wanted to punish us. But what if they left because we were holding them back? What if they needed to be alone so they could become something ... more?" The assembly hall grew very quiet. This was a thought that none of the major powers wanted to consider. "Impossible," Chancellor Vextar said quickly. "Humans are a young species. They have been in space for less than a century. They cannot have surpassed the combined knowledge of civilizations that are thousands of years old." But even as he said the words, Vextar remembered how human engineers had always found new solutions to old problems. How human doctors had cured diseases that had puzzled alien medicine for generations. How human negotiators had solved conflicts that had seemed impossible to resolve. Researcher Tae-Young Yoon worked in a deep space monitoring station that officially did not exist. Her job was to watch the spaces between stars, looking for signs of human activity that the aliens might discover. What she found made her call Earth immediately. "Director Lee," she said when his face appeared on her screen, "you need to see this." "What have you found, Tae-Young?" "Human ships, sir. Hundreds of them. Moving through the void spaces beyond the galactic rim, using jump routes that shouldn't exist according to alien star charts." "Shouldn't exist or do exist, but the aliens never found them?" "The second one, sir. It appears that human exploration teams have discovered natural hyperspace channels that connect to other star clusters. We're not just hiding in our own solar system anymore. We're expanding into regions that other species consider unreachable." Director Lee was quiet for a moment. "How many new colonies?" "At least 50 confirmed, sir. And the expansion rate is increasing. At this pace, human space will be larger than the entire Galactic Council's territory within 2 years." "Excellent. Continue monitoring and report any alien activity in those regions." As Tae-Young closed the communication, she looked out at the stars and smiled. The aliens thought they had seen the last of humanity when Captain Hansal Kim walked out of their council chamber. They had no idea that they had actually seen the first moment of humanity's real beginning. In the dark between the stars, the silent fleet moved like ghosts, protecting human interests and gathering information. On worlds that had been lifeless rocks just months before, human cities grew under alien suns. And in lab, 2 years had passed since humanity disappeared from galactic society, and the effects were becoming impossible to ignore. In the great trading centers of the galaxy, markets that had been stable for centuries were now in chaos. Ships waited in long lines at spaceports because the efficient human traffic controllers were gone. Medical research that had depended on human doctors had stopped completely. Wars that human negotiators had kept quiet were now burning across a dozen worlds. Fleet Admiral Subin Kang stood on the bridge of her flagship, the New Horizon. reading reports that would have seemed like fantasy just 3 years ago. Her deep space reconnaissance teams had been exploring the regions beyond the galactic rim, and what they found there changed everything humans thought they knew about their own capabilities. "Admiral," said Commander Park Hyun-woo, approaching with a data tablet in his hands, "the scout team from Expedition 7 has returned. You need to see their report immediately." Subin took the tablet and began reading. Her eyes grew wide as she absorbed the information. According to the scouts, humanity had built cities on worlds that should have been impossible to live on. Underwater colonies on ocean planets where the pressure would crush normal ships. Mountain cities on worlds where the gravity was so strong it should have flattened any building. Desert settlements on planets so hot that metal melted in the daytime. "How many colonies did they count?" she asked. "Over 200 confirmed settlements, Admiral, and they only explored a small section of the region. The actual number could be much higher." "What about defensive systems?" "Every colony is protected by energy barriers that our sensors cannot analyze. The barriers appear to be solid walls, but ships can pass through them easily if they transmit the correct identification codes. Ships without codes are turned away by some kind of force field." Subin handed the tablet back to Hyun-woo. "Prepare a full briefing for Director Lee. He needs to know how far we've expanded beyond the official reports." While Subin's ships explored humanity's new territories, the alien governments were dealing with crises they had never imagined. The Valorian Empire, proud and ancient, faced the worst plague in their species' history. A disease that attacked. Their golden exoskeletons had spread to dozens of their worlds, and their medical technology was completely useless against it. Ambassador Zenthal, an elderly Valorian with wings that had lost their shine from worry, stood before the emergency council of his empire's greatest leaders. "Honored members," he said, his voice weak from the stress of the past months, "our doctors estimate that we will lose 30% of our population within the next year if we cannot find a cure." "What about the medical databases from other species?" asked General Korthak. "Surely the hegemony or the Mentarch have some knowledge that can help us." "We have tried everything in the Galactic Medical Archives," Zenthal replied. "The disease is unlike anything any species has encountered before. It seems to adapt and change faster than our treatments can be developed." The council chamber fell silent. Every Valorian in the room knew what Zenthal was not saying directly. There was one species in the galaxy that had always been exceptionally good at solving medical problems that seemed impossible. One species whose doctors had saved countless lives by thinking in ways that other species could not imagine. "The humans," whispered Chancellor Vextar. "Their medical technology was always more creative than ours. The humans who no longer speak." "To us," Zenthal said bitterly. "The humans we voted to restrict because we thought they were too dangerous." Perhaps they would help if we asked properly," suggested a younger council member. "Perhaps if we apologized." "We cannot apologize," Chancellor Vextar said firmly. "We are the Valorian Empire. We do not apologize to species we once considered inferior." But even as he spoke the words, Vextar knew that pride might cost his people everything. The decision to try reaching Earth was made 3 days later, when the death count from the plague reached 1 million Valorians. Ambassador Zenthal's ship, the Golden Wing, approached the edges of human space with a message of desperate hope. What he found there made him understand how completely the galaxy had misunderstood humanity's withdrawal. The solar system that contained Earth was surrounded by a barrier of energy that stretched from the sun to beyond the orbit of Pluto. The barrier was not solid like a wall, but it was clearly there, bending light and space in ways that hurt to look at directly. Zenthal's ship sensors could not analyze it, could not understand how it worked, could not even tell if it was natural or artificial. "Broadcasting on all frequencies," reported his communications officer. "No response from Earth or any human settlement." "Continue broadcasting," Zenthal ordered. "Tell them we need their help. Tell them we are willing to discuss new agreements." For 3 days, the Golden Wing orbited at the edge of the barrier, sending messages that received no reply. The humans could obviously detect the Valorian ship, but they chose not to answer. Earth had become as unreachable as a star on the fourth day. Zenthal gave up and ordered his ship to return home. As they turned to leave, a human message finally came through their communication system. It was just 5 words, spoken in a calm female voice. "We are no longer available." Inside the solar system, Intelligence Officer Yuri Shin watched the Valorian ship depart from her monitoring station on Luna Base. Her job was to track all alien activity near Earth and coordinate responses to contact attempts. This was the 15th alien delegation to approach human space in the past month, and like all the others, they had been politely ignored. "Another one requesting medical assistance," she reported to her supervisor, Director Kim Min-jae. "This time it's the Valorians. They seem to be facing some kind of epidemic. What's our intelligence on the situation?" Min-jae asked. "Bad for them, very bad. Our deep cover agents report that their medical system is completely overwhelmed. Death rates are increasing daily. They're probably hoping we'll help them like we used to during the council days." "And our response? The same as always. Earth is not available for consultation. If they want help, they'll need to wait until we're ready to talk to the galaxy again." Min-jae nodded approvingly. Any sign that they're willing to acknowledge that their treatment of humanity was wrong? None. They still seem to think this is a temporary disagreement that can be solved with the right diplomatic words. Then they haven't learned anything yet. Continue monitoring and report any significant changes. While the Valorians struggled with their plague, other species were discovering their own problems. The peaceful Mentarch found that their trade routes were constantly attacked by pirates now that human patrol ships no longer protected the space lanes. The hegemony's information networks had huge gaps where human data sources used to provide crucial intelligence. Even the proud council itself was paralyzed by disagreements that human negotiators used to help resolve. Biotechnician Jae Hyun-oh worked in a research facility that had been built inside a hollow asteroid, far from any alien sensors. His laboratory was filled with volunteers from every branch of human space, people who had agreed to test the most advanced biological improvements ever attempted. "Subject 47, please report for final testing," he announced through the facility's communication system. A woman named Lieutenant Soo Young entered the testing chamber. She looked normal, but the readings on Jae-hyun's instruments showed that she was far from ordinary. Her bones were 3 times stronger than normal human bones. Her muscles could function in any atmosphere. Her brain processed information at speeds that approached computer-level calculation. "How do you feel, Lieutenant?" Jae-hyun asked. "Excellent, Doctor. Better than I've ever felt in my life. When do I return to active duty?" "Tomorrow. You'll be assigned to the deep exploration teams heading beyond the galactic rim. Your enhanced capabilities will allow you to survive in environments that would kill unmodified humans." Soo Young smiled. "I'm ready to see what's out there." The enhancement program was humanity's answer to the galaxy's limitations. If other species thought humans were too weak or too limited to explore dangerous regions of space, then humans would simply become stronger and more capable. The volunteers in Jae-hyun's program could survive in hard vacuum, breathe poisonous atmospheres, and heal from injuries that would be fatal to baseline humans. But the most important enhancement was not physical. The modified humans could think faster and more creatively than ever before, combining human intuition with computer-like processing power. They were becoming something new, something that the galaxy had never seen before. Back in the Galactic Council chambers, an emergency session was being held to discuss the growing crisis. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to share their problems and try to find solutions. "The trade disruption has cost our economy 12% of its value," reported the delegate from the Merchants Coalition. "Shipping costs have doubled because we can no longer use the safe routes that humans used to protect. Our research programs have stopped completely," added the representative of the Science Guild. 40% of our projects depended on human creativity and problem-solving methods. "The medical crisis is spreading," said a delegate from the hegemony. Three species are now facing epidemics that are traditional me. Explorer Na Young Choi had been traveling for 8 months beyond the edge of the galaxy, following signals that her ship's computer said were impossible. Her vessel, the Starseeker, was one of humanity's newest exploration ships equipped with technology that could detect things hiding in the dark spaces between star systems. What she found there made her immediately send an emergency transmission back to Earth. Director Lee, she said into her communication device, knowing the message would take hours to reach human space. You need to see this. All of humanity needs to see this. On her ship's main screen was an image that would change how every intelligent species thought about humanity forever. Floating in the emptiness beyond the galaxy's edge was a structure so large that Na Young's mind had trouble understanding what she was looking at. It was a ring. A perfect circle made of metal and crystal that surrounded an entire star. The ring was covered with cities, forests, and oceans that stretched for millions of kilometers. Ships moved between the ring and other structures that floated nearby, like artificial planets. The whole construction was bigger than most solar systems. Computer, estimate the population capacity of the primary structure, Na Young ordered. Analysis complete. The ring structure could support approximately 50 billion human inhabitants in Earth-standard living conditions. Na Young sat back in her chair trying to process what this meant. In 3 years, humanity had built something that could house more people than lived on all the Council worlds combined. And this was just one structure. Her long-range sensors showed dozens of similar constructions scattered throughout the region. Computer, scan for additional artificial structures in the surrounding area. Scanning ... complete. I detect 47 ring structures, 12 sphere constructions, and approximately 300 mobile space habitats. Total estimated population capacity, 2 trillion humans. Na Young's hands shook as she recorded. Her findings: humanity had not just left the galaxy. They had built a new civilization that was larger and more advanced than anything the Council had ever imagined possible. Supreme Commander Wu Jin Bei stood in the command center of the largest human construction, a ring world called New Horizon that orbited a carefully controlled star. Through the transparent walls of his office, he could see the curved surface of the ring stretching away in both directions until it disappeared into the distance. Cities with towers that reached into the artificial sky dotted the landscape, connected by transport systems that moved faster than the speed of sound. "Commander," said his aide, Captain Ji Min Hong, "we're receiving the Explorer's transmission from the Galactic Edge. She's transmitted detailed scans of our outer constructions." "Good. It's time the homeworlds knew how far we've expanded. What's the status of the manufacturing centers?" "All ring worlds are operating at full capacity, sir. We're completing 3 new habitat spheres every month, and the automated shipyards are producing 50 new vessels daily." Wu Jin nodded with satisfaction. While the aliens had been worried about their missing trade routes and medical problems, humanity had been busy building the largest civilization in galactic history. Every human who had been evacuated from the old Council territories now lived in conditions that were better than anything they had known before. And the research projects. Dr. Park's team has successfully tested the instantaneous transportation system. We can now move ships and cargo between any 2 points in our territory without using hyperspace. Dr. Kim's group has perfected the matter conversion technology. We can now transform raw energy directly into any material we need. Excellent. Begin Phase 3 of the expansion plan. It's time to establish contact with civilizations beyond our galaxy. The news of humanity's true achievements reached Earth just as the most desperate alien delegation in galactic history was approaching the solar system's energy barrier. The Mentarch Collective, the gentle species that loved books more than battles, was facing complete extinction. Their homeworlds were being destroyed by an expanding wave of stellar radiation that their technology could not stop or escape. Desperation, they had sent their greatest scientist, Elder Mind Kethron, to beg Earth for help. "Please," Kethron broadcast toward the barrier. "We know you have no reason to help us. We know our species voted to restrict your growth, but we are dying. Our children are dying. If there is any mercy left in humanity, please help us." For 3 days there was no response. Kethrun waited in his small ship, watching the beautiful blue planet Earth spinning slowly behind its wall of energy. He had given up hope when something impossible happened. Human ships appeared. They did not come through the barrier or around it. They simply materialized in space near his vessel, as if they had stepped out of thin air. The ships were unlike anything in the galactic databases. They seemed to be made of liquid metal that flowed and changed shape as he watched. Some were as small as fighters, others as large as battleships, but they all moved with a grace that made them look alive. Captain Yunji Lee commanded the rescue fleet from her flagship, the Compassion. Her ship's hull shifted from silver to gold as the emotional resonance detectors responded to the fear and hope radiating from the alien vessel. "Elder." "Kethrun," she said, her voice carrying clearly through space to his communication system. "We have received your request for assistance. Humanity will help your people. You will help us? Even after what the Council did to you?" "The Council's actions were wrong, but that doesn't mean your people should die because of their mistakes. Prepare your ship for escort. We will take you to safety." What happened next became legend throughout the galaxy. In less than 6 hours, human ships evacuated the entire Mentarch collective from their dying worlds. Not just the important people or the wealthy ones, everyone, every Mentarch citizen, from the greatest scholars to the smallest children, was transported to safety aboard human vessels that seemed to have unlimited capacity. The technology the humans used made no sense to anyone watching. Their ships could apparently exist in multiple places at once, loading people from dozens of worlds simultaneously. They moved through space without using any known form of propulsion, appearing wherever they were needed instantly. But the most shocking part was what happened after the evacuation. The humans didn't just save the Mentarch people. They gave them new homes. "These worlds are yours now," Captain Unji told Elder Kethrun as they looked out at a system of 3 beautiful planets orbiting a gentle yellow star. "They have been prepared specifically for your people's needs. The gravity, atmosphere, and climate are identical to your lost homeworlds." "But how is this possible?" "These worlds show signs of having been terraformed recently." "Did you create them just for us?" "Humanity now has the ability to build worlds as easily as we once built cities. Creating new homes for your people was not difficult for us." Kethrun's large eyes filled with tears. "Why? Why would you do this for us?" "Because it's the right thing to do. And because we remember that your people were among the few who spoke against restricting our expansion. You treated us with respect even when others did not." The rescue of the Mentarch collective sent shockwaves throughout galactic society. Within days, every news network in known space was broadcasting images of the impossible human ships and their miraculous rescue operation. For the first time, the galaxy saw clear evidence of what humanity had become during their 3 years of silence. Counselor Rixta of the Hegemony stood before an emergency session of the Galactic Council, holding a data crystal that contained classified intelligence reports. His brain fluid had turned a deep purple color that indicated extreme distress. "Honored representatives," he said, his mechanical voice trembling slightly, "I must present information that will change how we understand our current situation." He activated the crystal and holographic images filled the chamber. Ships that moved without engines. Weapons that could transport entire fleets across the galaxy instantly. Defensive systems that made conventional military technology look like stone tools. "Our intelligence analysis indicates that humanity now possesses technology that is centuries ahead of our most advanced research. They have developed faster-than-light communication that requires no relay stations. Matter conversion systems that can create any substance from pure energy. Defensive capabilities that could repel the combined fleets of every council member simultaneously." The chamber erupted in noise as representatives from dozens of species began talking at once. Some sounded angry, others frightened. All sounded shocked. "This is impossible," Chancellor Vextar declared. "No species advances this quickly, not even humans." "The evidence is clear, Chancellor," Richter replied. "While we were focused on maintaining the political status quo, humanity was focused on unlimited growth and development. We tried to slow them down, so they left us behind completely." Elder historian Welfin stood up slowly. "What does this mean for our future relationship with humanity?" "It means," said a new voice from the back of the chamber, "that we are no longer equals." The voice belonged to Captain Rextall, the small trader who had been watching galactic politics for decades. "Humanity is not just more advanced than us now. They have become something entirely different. They are post-scarcity, post-conflict, post-limitation." The Galactic Council was dying, and everyone knew it. In the Great Assembly Hall, where hundreds of species had once gathered to make decisions that affected trillions of lives, now only half the seats were filled. The empty chairs belonged to governments that had collapsed, species that had withdrawn to handle their own crises, or civilizations that had simply given up on the Council's ability to solve anything. President Insu Kim stood in his office on Earth, looking out at the blue oceans and white clouds of humanity's birth world. He was Hansal Kim's father, and like his son, he had spent his life trying to build bridges between different peoples. But now he faced a choice that would change the galaxy forever. "Mr. President," said his aide, Secretary Minji Park, "the Council has sent another formal request for communication. This is the 47th request in the past month." "What are they offering this time?" Insu asked without turning from the window. "Full restoration of humanity's council membership, permanent seats on all major committees, and unlimited expansion rights throughout the galaxy." Insu almost smiled. 3 years ago, these offers would have been everything humanity wanted. Now they seem small and meaningless, like offering a bird the right to fly when it had already learned to travel between stars. And what do they want in return? The same thing they always want. They want us to solve their problems, stop the wars they can't end, cure the diseases they can't treat, fix the economic collapse they can't prevent. Tell them what we've told them before. Earth is not available for consultation. But even as he gave the order, Insu knew that the time for silence was almost over. Humanity had grown beyond the need to hide, and the galaxy's suffering was becoming impossible to ignore. Soon, very soon, Earth would have to decide what kind of relationship they wanted with their former neighbors. "Mr. President," Minji said carefully, "there's something else. Intelligence reports that several Council species are developing what they call humanity countermeasures, weapons designed specifically to fight our technology. Are we concerned?" "No, sir. Our defensive capabilities are far beyond anything they could develop, but their attempts suggest they still see us as a potential enemy rather than a potential ally." And Sue finally turned from the window. "Then perhaps it's time to show them what we really are." General Haiyanwu Zhang commanded Earth's Response Coordination Center from a facility built deep inside the moon. His job was to monitor the thousands of requests for help that arrived every day from across the galaxy and decide which ones humanity should answer. The requests were heartbreaking in their desperation. Entire species facing extinction from diseases, natural disasters, or wars they couldn't end. Children dying on worlds where the technology to save them existed but was controlled by governments too proud or too poor to ask for outside help. "General," reported his communications officer, Lieutenant Da-Yun SEO, "we're receiving an emergency transmission from the Valorian Empire. It's different from their previous messages." "How different?" "It's not from their government, sir. It's from a group of Valorian doctors who are treating plague victims. They're asking for medical assistance, directly bypassing their official channels." Han Wu leaned forward in his chair. This was interesting. For months, the Valorian government had refused to officially request help, apparently believing that admitting they needed assistance would damage their reputation. But now individual Valorians were reaching out on their own. "What's our assessment of their situation?" "Critical, sir. Death rates are approaching 10,000 per day across their empire. Their medical system has completely collapsed. Without intervention, their species could lose half its population within 6 months. And our ability to help them? Complete cure would take our medical teams approximately 72 hours to develop and deploy. The disease they're facing is actually quite simple from our current technological perspective. Hyowu made his decision. Dispatch a medical fleet to Valorian space. Full humanitarian assistance, no political conditions. Sir, the Valorian government hasn't officially requested our help. This could create diplomatic complications. Sometimes doing the right thing creates complications. We'll deal with them as they arise. The breaking point came when Emperor Kethver of the Valorian Empire made a choice that would have been unthinkable just 1 year earlier. Faced with the complete collapse of his civilization, he swallowed his pride and personally traveled to the edge of human space. His ship, the Imperial Glory, was the most magnificent vessel in the Valorian fleet. Its golden hull was decorated with the symbols of 1,000 victories, and its crew included the finest officers in the Empire. But as it approached the energy barrier around Earth's solar system, it looked small and fragile compared to the human constructions visible in the distance. "This is Emperor Kethver of the Valorian Empire," he broadcast toward Earth. "I request an audience with the leaders of humanity." For several hours there was no response. Kethver waited in his throne room, surrounded by the artifacts of his ancient empire, wondering if he had made the right choice. Then, without warning, a human ship appeared next to the Imperial Glory. The human vessel was unlike anything in Kethver's experience. It seemed to be made of flowing light rather than solid matter, and it changed shape constantly as he watched. Somehow, he knew without being told that this ship could destroy his entire fleet without effort. "Emperor Kethver," came a human voice through his communication system. "I am Admiral Sojin Park. I will escort you to the negotiation site." Admiral Park ... I remember that name. "Are you related to Ambassador Sojin Park, who served during the council years? She was my grandmother. She taught me much about diplomacy and the importance of treating all species with respect." The negotiation took place on a neutral station that the humans had constructed specifically for the meeting. The station was beautiful in a way that made Kethver's eyes hurt to look at it directly. The walls seemed to be made of crystallized starlight, and the air itself felt somehow alive and welcoming. Admiral Sojin Park was younger than Kethver had expected, but her eyes held the wisdom of someone who had seen the rise and fall of civilizations. She sat across from him at a table that appeared to be carved from a single massive diamond. "Your Majesty," she said formally, "what brings the leader of the Valorian Empire to request an audience with humanity?" Kethver had prepared a dozen different speeches for this moment, each designed to preserve his dignity while asking for help. But when the time came, he found himself speaking simple truth instead. "My people are dying, Admiral. We have been too proud to ask for help, and our pride is killing us. I come to beg humanity to save my species, even though we do not deserve your mercy." Sojin studied his face for a long moment. "What are you willing to offer in return for our assistance?" "Anything, everything, our technology, our resources, our loyalty. We will serve humanity if that is what it takes to save our people. We don't want servants, Your Majesty. We want partners." "Partners?" Kethver looked confused. "But your technology is so far advanced beyond ours. What could we possibly offer that would be valuable to you? Your perspectives, your experiences, your unique ways of understanding problems. Humanity has learned that diversity of thought creates better solutions than any single species can develop alone." Sojin activated a holographic display that showed the current state of Valorian space. Plague-infected worlds appeared as red dots, while healthy worlds glowed green. The red greatly outnumbered the green. "We can cure your plague completely within 1 week," she said. "We can restore your damaged worlds within 1 month. We can provide you with technology that will prevent such disasters from occurring again. And in return, join us in building something better than the old council system." Help us create a galactic community based on cooperation rather than competition. Share your knowledge freely with other species, just as we share ours with you. Kethver felt tears forming in his compound eyes. You would save us and ask only that we help others? That's how progress works, Your Majesty. Everyone contributes what they can. Everyone benefits from what others contribute. No one gets left behind. The formal agreement took only minutes to negotiate. The Valorian Empire would become humanity's first full partner in what they called the Cooperative Alliance. Unlike the old council system, which had been based on rules and restrictions, the alliance was based on voluntary participation and mutual support. Within hours of the agreement being signed, human medical ships began arriving throughout Valorian space. The plague that had threatened to destroy an entire civilization was eliminated in 6 days. The damaged worlds were restored to full health in 3 weeks. The grateful Valorians immediately began sharing their own knowledge and resources with other species facing similar crises. News of the Valorian rescue spread throughout the galaxy faster than hyperspace travel. Species that had been struggling with their own problems suddenly understood that help was available, but only if they were willing to abandon the old ways of thinking about galactic politics. The Peaceful Merchants Alliance was next to approach. Humanity, followed by the Science Guild and dozens of smaller governments. Each negotiation followed the same pattern. Humanity offered unlimited assistance in exchange for part. 5 years had passed since humanity severed ties with the Galactic Council, and the galaxy was a completely different place. Where once there had been countless small wars, trade disputes, and political arguments, now there was something that most species had never experienced before: real peace. Ambassador Sung-Ho Park stood on the observation deck of Horizon Station, watching ships from dozens of different species dock at the massive space habitat. Unlike the old council chambers on Nexus Prime, Horizon Station was not built for politics and ceremony. It was built for work. Real work that solved real problems. The station itself was a marvel that demonstrated humanity's new capabilities. It existed in multiple dimensions at once, allowing it to be much larger inside than it appeared from the outside. Different sections of the station had different gravity and atmospheric conditions, so that every species could work comfortably alongside others. "Ambassador," said his aide, Captain Yunesio Kim, "the morning briefing is ready. We have 17 crisis situations that need attention today." Sung-Ho nodded and walked toward the main conference room. 5 years ago, 17 crises would have meant months of debate, political maneuvering, and compromise solutions that satisfied no one. Now it meant 17 problems that would be solved by the end of the day. The conference room was filled with beings from across the galaxy. Valorian engineers worked alongside Mentarch philosophers and hegemony analysts. Former enemies now collaborated on projects that would have seemed impossible under the old system. "First item," announced Dr. Hua Young-Lee, who served as the day's coordination officer. "The coral plague affecting the ocean worlds in the Spiral Arm region." A holographic display showed a dozen water-covered planets where beautiful coral reefs were dying from a mysterious disease. On the old council, this crisis would have led to arguments about jurisdiction, funding, and which species was responsible for cleanup. "Our medical teams have identified the cause," reported Dr. Jin-Ho Nam, a human scientist who worked with a mixed-species research group. "Industrial pollution from mining operations in the nearby asteroid fields. The solution requires both immediate medical treatment for the affected reefs and long-term changes to mining practices." "Time frame for implementation?" Sung-Ho asked. "Medical treatment can begin immediately. We have ships equipped with reef restoration technology standing by. Mining operation modifications will take 2 weeks to implement across all affected systems. Any objections or alternative suggestions?" The room was quiet for a moment as representatives from various species consulted their notes and computers. Finally, a delegate from the mining guild spoke up. "The proposed changes will reduce our mineral extraction efficiency by approximately 12%. This will impact supply chains throughout the region. The Alliance's matter conversion facilities can compensate for any mineral shortages. replied Engineer Taemin Oh, a human who specialized in resource management. We can produce any required materials from renewable energy sources. Approved, Sung-ho said. Next item. This was how the galaxy worked now. Problems were identified, solutions were developed, and implementation began immediately. No endless debates, no political posturing, no bureaucratic delays. Just intelligent beings working together to make things better. Dr. Minesio Kwan stood on the surface of a world that had been completely dead just 6 months ago. The planet, designated New Garden 7, had been a burned-out wasteland left behind by centuries of industrial abuse. Now it was covered with forests, grasslands, and clean rivers that sparkled in the light of its young star. Final environmental assessment complete, reported her assistant, Technician Jong Hyan Choi. All ecosystems are stable and self-sustaining. The planet is ready for colonization. Min Seo smiled as she watched a flock of birds fly overhead. The birds were not native to this world. They had been brought from a dozen different planets and genetically adapted to thrive in their new environment. In a few years, New Garden 7 would be home to millions of beings from species that had lost their original worlds to war, disease, or natural disasters. The Galactic Restoration Project was humanity's gift to the galaxy. Every world that had been damaged by conflict or exploitation was being repaired and made habitable again. Entire species that had been facing extinction now had new homes that were better than the worlds they had lost. Dr. Kwan, Jong Hyan said, consulting his tablet. We have requests for restoration work on 43 additional worlds this month. Should we expand the project team? Always, Minesio replied. There's no such thing as too much healing. The restoration work was possible because humanity had solved the problem of scarcity. Their matter conversion technology could create any material from pure energy. Their transportation systems could move resources instantly across the galaxy, and their automated manufacturing could build anything that was needed, but the most important tool in the restoration project was not technological. It was philosophical. Humanity had convinced the galaxy that cooperation was better than competition, that helping others was more rewarding than defeating them, and that there was enough abundance for everyone if people were willing to share. Philosopher Jun Ho Yoon worked in a library that existed partially outside normal space, allowing it to contain the collected knowledge of every intelligent species in the galaxy. His job was to help different cultures understand each other and find common ground for cooperation. Professor Yoon, said his student, a young Valorian named Kethsai, I don't understand how humans develop such different ways of thinking about problems. Your species is relatively young, but your approaches to conflict resolution are more sophisticated than civilizations that are thousands of years older. Junho smiled. This was a question he heard often from students representing species throughout the galaxy. The answer is not complicated, he said. Humans learned early in our history that our greatest strength was our ability to change and adapt. When something didn't work, we tried something else. When we encountered problems, we looked for new solutions instead of insisting that the old ways were correct. But doesn't that make human society unstable? How can you plan for the future if you're constantly changing your methods? Change is not the opposite of stability, Junho explained. Change is how you maintain stability in a universe that is always evolving. The species that refuse to adapt are the ones that become unstable and eventually fail. He activated a holographic display that showed the development of galactic civilization over the past 1,000 years. Look at the pattern. Every major crisis in galactic history was caused by societies that refused to change when change was needed. The old Galactic Council failed because it tried to maintain the same structures and rules even when those structures no longer served their purpose. And humanity succeeded because you were willing to abandon the council system entirely? We succeeded because we were willing to try something better. The alliance system works not because it's perfect, but because it can evolve and improve as we learn more about what people need. The holographic display now showed the current state of galactic civilization. Millions of worlds connected by instantaneous transportation. Thousands of species working together on projects that benefited everyone. Conflicts resolved through negotiation and creative problem-solving rather than violence. This is what happens when intelligent beings focus on growth rather than control, Junho said. When they choose cooperation over competition. When they decide that everyone's success is more important than anyone's dominance. Captain Hansol Kim returned to Earth on a day when the sky was particularly blue and the clouds looked like cotton. Sculptures floating in an artist's imagination. He had been away for 2 years, leading exploration missions beyond the edge of the galaxy, making contact with civilizations that existed in other star clusters entirely. His ship, the Endless Journey, settled gently onto the landing pad at Seoul Spaceport. As he walked down the boarding ramp, Hansol was surprised to see how much his homeworld had changed in his absence. The cities were larger but somehow greener, with buildings that seemed to grow from the landscape rather than being imposed upon it. The air was cleaner than he remembered, and there were more parks filled with plants and animals from across the galaxy. "Welcome home, Captain," said Director Min-Ho Lee, who had come to greet him personally. "How was your expedition?" "Educational," Hansol replied. "We made contact with 17 different galactic civilizations. Some of them are much older than ours, some much younger. All of them are interested in joining the Alliance network." "Any hostile contacts?" "A few. There are civilizations out there that are still stuck in the old patterns of thinking about power and territory. But even they seem curious about our approach to problem solving. I think given time, most of them will choose cooperation over conflict." They walked together through the spaceport, past travelers from dozens of different worlds heading to destinations throughout known space. The old barriers between species had largely disappeared. Humans worked alongside Valorians on construction projects. Mentarch scholars taught classes to students from the hegemony. Former enemies had become friends and partners. "Min-Ho," Hansol said as they reached the transport station, "do you ever think